lot more to come here on the show. We got a little less than 3 hours to play with on the broadcast. We're going to drop the music down. We're going to turn up the lights, and no pants allowed with this, David. Just wanted to let you know. Yeah, you don't think you think I forgot about that. I didn't forget about that even a little bit, my friend. Welcome to the show. And this is so cool because we're celebrating 10 years of it. Behind the Mask, the Rise of Leslie Vernon, Nathan Baesel, as well as David Stieve. Guys, congratulations on 10 years. I mean, where do people think they're a year from now, let alone 10 years from now? Welcome to the show, guys. How's it going?
Really good, really good. Thanks for having us. It's a real pleasure to have somebody interested in a topic that we're very fond of.
I was gonna say.
and Jay, congrats to you guys for 5 years, man. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And on the Rhino Awards accolades. So
Thank you.
5 more years. 5 more years, you'll catch us.
I'm getting there. Oh my God, that's if the ghost can put up with me for another 5 more years. We'll see about that. We will see about that. So, you know what, guys? You talk about a topic that you're very interested in, very fond of. People out there, when they look at movies of the last decade, the last 15 years, most of the lists I see has Behind the Mask up there in big, bright letters because of the fact that just like Scream and that franchise, well, at least the first film, I don't know about the rest of the films, but at least the first film, it reignited not only a subgenre of horror, but also a generation of horror fans. I'll throw it over to you first, Nathan, because you are Leslie Vernon. You embodied the character with something that has not been seen for a very long time, and that's originality. You created an icon in him, someone who people look at now, and when they're sitting there in Q&As, and I remember Horror Hound 4 years ago, there's people in Leslie Vernon masks. There's people walking around with the sickle, and it's become that kind of a film over the last decade where people really revolve around it. What are your thoughts about it, Nathan, and how it's been over the last decade?
It's really impressive, but you should turn it over to David Stieve because he's the reason that Leslie Vernon is what Leslie Vernon is. I'm just saying a bunch of words that have been provided for me. I was given a unique opportunity in the role to kind of goof around a little bit and have fun. But that character came from the minds of David Stieve and Scott Glosserman, and those guys, I think, created something really special that we were just, as the executors of their of their interests, we all wanted it to be good too because it was just such a neat idea, and I think everybody felt like we were being included in something that could be really special, and it's really gratifying to see that it's still reaching people like that.
David, throw your opinion in there. Is it true what Nathan says, or is he paying you? Or are you paying him $20? What's going on with that?
I do owe him more than that. He's being a little self-deprecating, which is Nathan's style. But here's what he's not going to tell you: is that when we were going through the casting process, and I was lucky enough to be able to sit in on that with Scott.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you said, Jay. There was something about Nathan that he brought such originality to the role, even in the room, in the audition room, that I've told this story before, but it really got down to basically 2 choices for the role: Nathan and one other guy who was much more Jason Voorhees, much more straight up, big guy. That was going to be his thing.
The guy that I would have cast.
There you go.
which in retrospect, 10 years later, would have been a tremendous mistake. I mean, it's part of. At least half of the charm of this film is what Nathan brings to it as Leslie, in his non-working mode. And that was something that was apparent even in the audition room right away. Nathan brought something that, there was an unknown quotient to what he was doing, the choices he was making with the character that was really cool and sort of unsettling. And as soon as you get to that unsettling feeling, you're like, that's the guy.
Wow.
So he's right. There was a lot that went into building it and constructing it for him to take the reins on. But any writer will tell you, you do what you can. You write you write it to a certain point, and you turn it over to the actors and the director and the the people below the line, and everybody is doing the all the real work, and you see how far your idea went, and then you let them take it the rest of the way down the field.
And it's interesting because, Nathan, I remember the panel or the Q&A with you and Scott and Aaron Christensen and Horror Hound, and it was, for me, one of the most pivotal moments of me doing this show, because without Aaron Christensen, without Horror Hound Weekend, without you guys being up there, without Pam Grier being up there, without Tippi Hedren being up there, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. And
that's wild.
It's incredible, and that's what I'm saying. It's amazing how what you expect to do in the year, whether in 5 or 10 years, I had no idea with it. And you know what? You look at it, Nathan, that character going back 10 years, almost 11 years, I would guess, with pre-production and casting. What was your thoughts about it initially with Leslie Vernon and what you wanted to bring to that character from the material Dave and Scott brought to you?
Well, it already had so much kind of spontaneity written into it. It already portrayed a character who was just really surprisingly congenial. Just kind of not what you would expect from somebody who goes around doing what they do. And so I felt like, well, already kind of built into the framework, there's just there's a whole lot of room to maneuver in. There's a lot of options, a lot of choices possible, and so it was just the kind of thing that you can never get bored with, because to continue with that kind of spontaneous vibe that the script clearly encourages. There's just really no non-possibilities. Everything is possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was just a really wild jumping off point from which to kind of entertain the idea of what this guy would be like, and what some of the more interesting choices might be. And I think I'm just a contrarian naturally, and so I look at a script and I immediately get a sense of how every other male actor would play it. I go the opposite direction because I feel like, well, at least I'm going to get points for originality,
Wow.
And that's what that was just completely going the non-instinctual direction and indulging in that, and just having a lot of fun. A guy that ultimately doesn't apologize for what he does, doesn't feel like there's any need for him to apologize for what he does. He really takes a lot of pride in what he does. And so when you have that kind of justification going on for, what motivates a character, it's just a fabulous diving board to jump off of.
Hey, you know what? This is for both of you, and I'll start first with you, Nathan, and then David. I want the writer's perspective on this. But Nathan, as Leslie, majority of the film, you obviously are very passionate about the mission of the final girl, the aspect of your destiny, and where you're going to stand with this character. But you are able to flip that switch, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying as we get closer to the end, where you're facing off with Taylor when she's starting to question you, and you ask her to get into the van. Later on, when you go full mode of that, really insane character. How hard was it for you, and what did it take to be able to flip that switch from flamboyant, funny, charismatic to really seriously scary character?
It just kind of I guess I gravitate towards the dramatic in that way, where I just really enjoy exploring a character's more extreme qualities. And that, I think that's where I naturally kind of gravitate, and so that's kind of what ends up being the stuff that I really enjoy chewing on, is the stuff that feels like, let's explore here. Let's see what there is of value here, and in a really dynamic way. That's just what I'm always seeking as an actor, but just rarely finding.
That's true.
An opportunity for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because you look at other characters of the same ilk, and the only one that ever comes close to it for me, Nathan, was the aspect of Freddy Krueger. And, but he's pretty much on the same wavelength the entire time. You go from one extreme to the other throughout the movie. And David, when you see those aspects that Nathan's able to, turn on a dime, flip that switch, and go from, charismatic to very scary, for you as a writer, was that what you intended from the beginning, or did you have to tailor, and did you work with the material once you saw what Nathan was able to bring?
I think it was, again, Nathan mentioned this earlier, I think that the framework was there, but, I mean, as a writer and sort of being, able to be there on set, which is a rarity, which is, reserved for independent film, really.
Yeah.
But to be able to be there and to see
really
what was going
unique.
on, I think Jay, you hit on two of my sort of favorite moments from my time on the set was that moment you're talking about, that what you're talking about is transition.
Yes.
There's a scene where it's the cornfield scene.
Oh yeah.
There's some great sort of iconic images of Nathan, of Leslie rather, in the boy mode. But we're on set, we were shooting that, and one of my favorite moments was Nathan. I mean, I can't describe his process. I don't know what he does, but I can tell you as an outsider standing there watching him, the time between takes was the most breathtaking for me, because this is a guy who's in full-blown killer mode, standing barefoot in freezing mud, at the middle of the night in this beautiful place in Portland, and we have to reset something, and Nathan would just kind of come over and sit down on a chair, and I like to think that I had a sort of a special bond at that point, because I felt like I was the only one that could really kind of get near him.
Wow.
I put like a coat over his shoulder because he was so in the zone that he wouldn't engage with anybody. He wouldn't talk to anybody. He's obviously freezing. He's barefoot. Yeah. There's a health issue there.
Yeah.
But he was just, it wasn't, you couldn't really break him out of that character. And then really quickly, there's a third sort of transformation, I think, Jay, that that gets overlooked. Is He has his gregarious mode. He has his killer mode. But one of my other favorite moments in this is there's a scene where he and Taylor are sitting in the loft of the barn, and he sort of describes this, this moment, like this is the moment where it's about to happen, and it's this powerful sort of introspective thing where he's not really being gregarious, he's not really performing, he's not in either persona, but he realizes that he's sort of on the cusp of
greatness.
My God, this could be the thing I've been working my whole life for. And
wow.
that to me, that was one of the coolest moments there. It plays on the metaphor of Leslie as sort of this artist. We all get to that point where like, is this really going to happen? Am I really doing this? And I just love the layers. That there were three sort of personas that he brought to it.
Nathan,
what's really neat is I had a chance to chat a little bit with David last night, and the more I hear about what his process was, or what his kind of story is, the more I see parallels between what he's gone through in his career, what I've gone through in my career, and just kind of life in general. And there just feels like there's a lot of overlapping there. So it felt what I felt instinctually at the time, which ended proving itself out, was the more I just find ways to identify with the character in a really intimate way, the more I can just really commune with this guy, then the more I'm going to be able to drill. Oh gosh. The more I just. Oh God, I forgot the.
That's okay. No worries whatsoever. I was going to say, Nathan, that for me and David, you had brought this up. It's a love story. It's kind of really twisted and wicked, but the love and the dedication that Leslie Vernon has for what he does, and the loft moment is a great aspect, because all of us go through that where we're on that moment of greatness. Now, we're not killing people, mind you. Keep that in mind, folks. But the fact is that it's really going to a place of such dedication, such endearment, that it's really, really scary. And the relationship, Nathan, that you share with the character of Taylor, Angela Gothiels, I believe is her last name. There you go. Thank you very much. What was that like with it? Because she's so key in it, and she plays so well off of you as two very strong characters. Talk about that.
Oh, she was just so playful. She was just so easy to play with and interested in play. You know, it's just a big playground, and so the people that you get along better in the sandbox with, you can have more imaginative play. You know,
I like that.
She was just, she was just really willing to just play along with me, and that was just a lot of fun too, and showed up to a certain extent in our scenes, I think.
Oh, very much so. David.
Jay, that was my sort of hoity-toity writer moment where I was there, and Angela's performance to me, I had all these aspirations of what this great, magnificent turning point it was going to be when the big reveal happens. And Angela was great. She really, she humored all of. I had never done this before, and this is sort of me and my. I was sort of sitting in the loft of my career at that point, going, "This is really happening. They're shooting this movie." Wow. And it was such an important scene where I don't necessarily know that we're giving away spoilers here, but the moment where she sort of realizes what she's gotten herself into, I was so concerned about how she was going to play that, and man, thankfully she sort of humored me, listened to all my backseat direction. I was sneaking around behind Scott's back, and she still managed to somehow bring this sort of similar level to it that Nathan brought, which is she got the joke. Angela got the joke, but then she realized this is not a joke anymore. And to see her transition and how easy it was for her as an actor to switch gears, that's another one of my favorite moments.
Well, if I may throw in there, and this is something, David, and Nathan, you can jump in also, but when she walks in with her camera crew and the supposed final girl is having, I believe Kelly is having sex, that look on her face when she walks in and the crew walks in is brilliant, because not only is it funny, not only is it one of those moments where your heart drops because now for sure what's really going on here. You kind of put it together, but it's just so well timed on everyone's part, and that's a marriage of the writing. That's the marriage of the production right there that comes together amazingly. David or Nathan, would you two like to comment on that particular scene? I know you had your hand over your eyes the entire time, guys, but if you would give your commentary about it, not being the virgin, that would be wonderful.
Well, I mean, I'm going to state the obvious that, Caitlin Johnson, gorgeous, so that helps.
Yes.
But to see also Britton Spellings and Ben Pace, the comic relief in that, they carried a lot of that weight too. And you're absolutely right, that accented Angela's performance. But I mean, there was a confluence of a lot of beautiful talent and good instincts that came together, I think, in that scene for me.
Nathan, anything from you?
All of those scenes that I wasn't involved in were of interest to me because I could just not have any pressure on me, and I could just enjoy the process, and watch other people work, and so that was one of the ones that was fun to be there on the day of, to see how they would tackle it, and to see how it plays out is just really fun, kind of commemoration of what they were doing there.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. You know what, Nathan, you talk about pressure, and that's an interesting point I had not even thought about. When you have people like a Robert Englund on there, a Kane Hodder, you have Zelda Rubinstein, all these people who were so big in the horror genre, was there any pressure on you in front of them, or any pressure with the character knowing that you were living in a world where Jason and Michael and Freddy all existed? Was there any pressure to that?
This is Arthur Cullifer, the director of Headless.
And this is Shane Beasley, the Headless Killer.
And you are listening to the Horror Happens radio show.
No, not really, because it felt like what we were doing was unique enough and kind of stood alone enough from... because there was a documentary quality to it, it felt like it stood alone from any kind of comparisons to any of their movies structurally. So it was, really more a matter of dialing into the character and really trying to work on making the scenes come alive, and when we had an opportunity like the scene at the van, where one of the veterans is around and they're watching a scene and they're just sticking around because they're interested in watching.
Nice.
Rather than sitting in their trailer, they're interested in checking it out. And we do that scene, and in between takes, Robert Englund comes up to me and says, "You know what? You remind me of a young Anthony Perkins."
It sounds just like him. Wow.
And I'm like, holy shit. Robert Englund just compared me to fucking Anthony Perkins.
That's brilliant.
I can drop the mic. I'm walking away
that's
now.
Right.
Because it's not getting any better than this.
Oh, my God. You know what? Go ahead.
Jay, the other thing that was interesting there was that, we had this weird symmetry. It just kept echoing in this sort of, feedback loop of life imitating art, imitating life, imitating art. And I remember watching, even in Nathan's interactions with Scott Wilson, you have this mentor character who's
so funny.
Trying to chime in on his, this up-and-comer. And then even when the cameras weren't rolling, you would have Scott sort of being this sort of mentor character, father figure type guy to Nathan.
Yeah.
And it was so cool to watch it. And Robert to be sort of, Robert loves to share his knowledge. He does. It's one of the greatest things about him. And so for him to be pulling Nathan aside and sharing these things, it was like, it was so strange to watch the mentor relationship on film, and then to know it was sort of rooted in this real mentor relationship, and for the actors, it was fascinating to watch.
David, may I ask you, was any carrots, or Nathan, whoever would like to ask this, was any carrots truly hurt on the set of this movie with it? Because the way Scott Wilson goes ahead and chops up that carrot, man, oh my God. and that's some of the smart things that comes not only from the writing, but also from the performance of someone like a Scott Wilson, who's legendary. He's a legendary actor. He's done so much work way before The Walking Dead, because I think that's where most people only consider him now to be a part of it. But to see him snap so quick, to kind of turn it on then turn it off, where he gets into that rage and chops up, or I should say turns the carrot into juice almost, the way he does, it's brilliant. And for you, Nathan, with Scott Wilson, talk about that dynamic and relationship and what it was like on and off camera to have him as a part of this.
Oh, gosh. Well, Scott Wilson, you just couldn't hope for a more generous actor on a set, because this guy had every reason in the world to show up and cash a paycheck.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He really threw himself in, and like Robert Englund as well. They could have just shown up, clocked in, clocked out, and collected a paycheck, but they just really involved themselves thoroughly. Scott was so available as as an actor when we were working together, and as a person when we weren't, or we were in between scene, setups or something like that. He was just so available and warm a human being that you couldn't help but fall in love with the guy. And so developing a relationship that really connotes real intimacy between two people like he and I have in the movie, we were able to really establish that remarkably quickly, because Scott made himself available in that way.
It's incredible. And David, can you talk a little bit to that about about crafting Scott's character and what it was like? Because in the film, not only does he have his final girl, but also he's still so ingrained. He's like a soldier with the chamber and all that stuff. And that's another very funny scene, Nathan, where you all are digging him up and stuff like that. It's a great scene. David, talk to that.
Well, I think that's probably maybe my favorite character entrance into a film ever. I mean, so the way he shows up, it's like, I don't know anybody that showed up in a film better than that guy. Wow. But when I wrote the character, I mean, there was definitely a part of it that was, this is a guy who, really, that's all he knows to do. Like, if if you get to the end of your life and you've been a fireman your whole life, you sort of look for reasons to start fires. You know what I mean? So there's nothing that he doesn't really have anything to fall back on, and he meets the woman that sort of ended that part of his life, but there's still always that yearning. So that was there, but I'd never met Scott before, and honestly, I didn't really get to know him until afterwards. As the years have gone by, and this film has just continued to have legs, and to stay in touch with Scott and to hang out with him and his wife and to see them at festivals and to forge these relationships, which again is a testament to the film that we've all sort of stayed friends. But what Scott brought to it was ultimately all his own. I mean, I don't want to say it was a throwaway character, but it wasn't where my focus was when I was writing it. It was, he's the mentor figure, he's the Alec Guinness type, role model, and
very true.
It's all very, obvious. But I'll admit, I didn't put a lot more into Eugene, other than to know this is a guy who kind of can't let it go, and he wants to impart some of this knowledge, and it's also him living vicariously. All of the charm and all of the humor and all of that sort of stuff really was, that's just Scott's real personality kind of coming through.
Hey, Nathan, what was your first thoughts on the outfit for Leslie Vernon? What was your thoughts on it?
Oh gosh, I love the design from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just really loved what they showed me, and it felt like they had a really clear idea of what the design was going to be. So it felt like, okay, we're in good hands. And so I really didn't have to concern myself at all with the costume or the mask or anything. The only question,
I'm wearing all that stuff right now, actually. I'm wearing the whole thing right now.
Oh,
the
Lord.
only question was whether or not there was going to be shoes, and if
Yeah.
shoes, what kind of shoes. And I thought, you know what, if we're presenting an idea that this is kind of like a boy who's been abused, shoes kind of don't really have a place. It feels like the more exposed, the more kind of embryonic, we can get them, the better. And so no shoes was my idiotic contribution.
Oh, Lord.
And
dude, you had a lot of idiotic contributions, man. Don't sell yourself short.
You're right. One of
Oh,
many.
so much love. Well, for me, Nathan, I look at it and I think of you as the murderous Tom Sawyer. The way that you go around with the overalls and the attitude and all that stuff, it's remarkable. And David, I don't know where you and Scott drew the influence to pull this world together. I mean, you live in a world in this film where, as I said before, Michael Myers, Chucky, Jason, Freddy, they all live together. It's a wet dream for a horror fan. Where did the idea come from to build this world?
Oh, okay. Nathan, you can go take a break because he's heard the story about 75 times.
Okay.
I'm just going to take a nap here, shout real loud. When
Okay, you got it.
It's very clear. I mean, the answer is always the same because it was a moment I was having a conversation with my dad, and I moved from Wisconsin to LA, and kind of going through
Wow.
that. Every creative person has this moment where your parents are trying to be supportive, but you can hear in their voice like how's it going out there? And what they're really asking is, when are you going to give up this dream
Coming home.
and come back and get a real job and, get on with your life? And so I had that sort of frustration and hung up the phone, and I'm sort of mulling it over in my mind. And Halloween's on, which is today, one of my favorite horror movies, probably top 3.
Yeah.
And it just had this crossover moment while I was sort of processing everything. Thinking, am I doing the right thing? Am I screenwriting? Is this really going to work? And I had this moment of like watching, Michael Myers and thinking, God, what if there's if you're a slasher killer, do you question your life choices? And the joke was, what does Jason Voorhees do on Thursday the 12th? Is he worried about tomorrow?
Yeah.
Is he mowing the lawn? Does he have to pay bills? What's he doing?
That's too funny.
And it just morphed into this metaphor for
That's
any
too funny.
artist's struggle. It's really that's I think what the universal appeal. And Nathan and I were talking last night about the longevity of this and why it keeps resonating. And it's really because Leslie's struggle is just
Everyone
a
else's.
metaphor for every artist, every pro athlete, every person who aspires to be in music or anything. Let's say you say, what am I going to give? Should I really do this? Should I get a real job? And I think that's what resonates about it. So that was sort of the inception of the story and the character.
You know what, David, to pick up from that, you look at the aspect of the location where you do it. You have the house, you have the small town, you have the orchard. What was the idea behind the orchard? Because I find it fascinating, not only the fact that you have lots of obstacles to build that chase towards the end, but also you've got the apple press, which I found fascinating that you would throw that in there. And Nathan, how much of a scene it's built around with the squishing. You don't realize what kind of a torture device it really is until you see it in action. David, start off first. What was the thought behind the locations and writing it, and was that what you wanted?
Yeah, it was, but apple orchards has always just freaked me out. And I mean, I don't know, growing up in Wisconsin, it's just there are these long rows of trees, and there's usually, in the fall, there's bees involved, and it's just, it's I don't know, they're a nightmare to have to mow. I don't know, just for some reason, my whole life, apple orchards. And so, I mean, I think there was a part of it that when we got into the production of it, I think Scott Glosserman at some point called and said, we found this amazing orchard, we can just, fog it up, and it's going to be outstanding. So It's sort of a happy circumstance of what we had to work with, and it just so happened that and apple orchards and the apple press, for real hardcore fans or people who are from that, we're not really using the apple press in the right way in the film. It's kind of this weird sort of hybrid of what an apple press is. But I don't know, that's, as a writer, you have to think about. I think I heard one of your earlier guests talking about, how do you find originality without it being campy?
Sure.
And it's true. I had to think through these things in my life, and the post hole digger is another one. Was something I remember having to building swimming pool decks, and you have to dig the post holes, and that's some of the worst work in the world. And so, like, the post hole digger sort of was in my subconscious, and the apple orchard stuff. So I don't know where it comes from. It just sort of seeps out, and then we just happen to get a good location scout and good prop people that made it happen.
I gotta be honest, Nathan, I think David's got a lot of deep-seated issues with apples, to be honest with you. I really do. Nathan, you're back now. Are you awake, Nathan?
Yeah, yes.
Good. Okay. What was it from your side,
Nathan?
Nathan?
Did you do that whole bit about
Oh Lord, the Jerry Lewis and the Dean Martin here on the Horror Happens radio show.
I want to be Dino. I call Dino.
Okay, fair enough. You know what, Nathan? Also talk about that, because the locations, why they fit into the aspect of the traditional horror film, having that orchard and having the aspect of the little nooks and crannies, was that a challenge to be able to maneuver around in the mask as well as sit back and really get the scope of what you were going to do in those settings?
Yeah, well, the settings lent everything for how a scene was going to be structured, and the location scouts found just some really gorgeous locations and really interesting looking locations to shoot at, and so it was really our job to arrive on the scene and see, okay, well, how do we take advantage of everything that we've got in front of us here, and so a lot of the scenes would be built around using the geography in a shot. Some of the structures are just really, really gorgeously framed. And
true.
And so we were just kind of placing ourselves inside of the kind of spatial restrictions and trying to find a really clean way to execute and then move on to the next thing. We had really tight time constraints, so it was really amazing when we could show up on a location at a high school and stage a really, really complicated, multi-phased town shot, and get in there, and from arriving to wrapping at the location, it probably took 2 hours.
Wow.
That's just insane. You can't work that fast.
Yeah.
You never get an opportunity to work that fast.
Well, we had to work that fast, by the way, Jay, because there were restraining orders involved, and Nathan being around a schoolhouse. So
wow.
Oh boy!
I was just going to ask what pitfalls you didn't want to fall into, and I think we just found out what Nathan's was with this, the restraining orders. Okay, Nathan, finish up what you were saying, my friend.
So that was something that we had to do, and it's something that we really took a lot of enjoyment in doing was, each location was a practical, framing question, and try to find a way to execute the scene in a way that would work best. And there was just some really neat stuff that came up as a response to that question, to that problem.
You know what? We're coming up on it. We'll finish off with this for now, and I look forward, both of you, to the next conversation, because there's so many more questions I have about it, and so many more stories and answers that still need to be told when it comes to the aspect of Behind the Mask, the Rise of Leslie Vernon, celebrating 10 years this year, and God bless this film for the originality, for the humor, for the aspect of reinvigorating a decade's worth of horror, even more than that. And again, like I brought up before, like Scream, it really kind of reinvigorated what the genre was and kind of threw it back. And we hope for more coming up. Nathan, to you, and David, it's basically the same question, but for Nathan, what was the pitfall you didn't want to have the character of Leslie Vernon to fall into? And same thing with you, David. What was the pitfall you didn't want the story to fall into? Because you have a lot of things that mirror the world of the slasher and the world of horror, but there's certain things I'm sure you went, I don't want to get near that because it's going to ruin the movie or it's going to make it campy. Nathan, first to you, what was that?
Well, I didn't really have to do a whole lot of research, thankfully, into the horror genre, because a really clear point of view had been presented from the script. So, my job was kind of more of synthesizing that information in an effective way. And so I guess the main challenge that I had was just trying to make sure that, even as ridiculous as we could sometimes get, that
True.
It was everything was grounded in a sense of truth, and we weren't selling any of the characters out at any point. That we were just really respecting the characters, the relationships, the genre, and so it would end up, that was what I felt like was the biggest challenge, and I was really afraid that somebody would come away with a sense that what we were doing was insincere or just shallow, because I felt like we really enjoyed working in a deeper way, and so to see that actually having come across for a lot of people, that's been extremely gratifying.
And David, take us home. Go ahead. What's the pitfall?
You know what? I mean, well, Nathan stole my answer, so that's not fair. But he's right. We never wanted it to be insulting to horror fans. We never wanted it to be condescending or trite. We wanted real horror fans to be in on the joke.
Wow.
But we didn't want it to be campy. We wanted it to still be, a little bit serious and scary enough that, even if you were in on it and you got the joke, you could still say, okay, I appreciate what they did. And I'll just say, in closing on that note, none of this, we wouldn't be here, Jay. Now, 10 years in, we would never be here without the fan support. And I don't say that from an empty standpoint. I mean, so many people that you want to thank. I don't want to turn this into some kind of speech, but the media, John Squires from Bloody Disgusting was a huge champion. He continues to be a huge champion. Rob Belluzzo, wrote for Blumhouse, has continually sort of put us on these lists and keeps it fresh and keeps it in everybody's mind, and it still holds up. And I mean, the fans that we encounter at these conventions, and super fans like our boy Danny Foster, Nathan. I mean, these people out there they've just taken this thing to another level where they really, the fans are what have kept this thing going, and we would not be having this conversation without them.
Amen.
Absolutely.
That is a wonderful way to conclude this conversation. David, Nathan, guys, continued success in everything that you do. We look forward to the next conversation. Anything you guys want to say before we head off?
No, thanks for your interest in this topic that we love so well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. David, anything to add?
No, I mean, thank you again for having us on, and again, just for being another one of the voices that keeps the drumbeat going on this thing. And we'll see you when you come to the West Coast.
We look forward to it, guys. Thank you so much, and we will continue the support. Check out the film, whether you buy it, whether you stream it, whatever it is. Support great horror like Behind the Mask, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Bye.